Larry Goldberg is with me because that's what he does on his Monday night. Larry, don't you have anything better to do than to spend an hour with me on a Monday afternoon?
I couldn't have think of anything better, Andy.
Perfect. It's exactly. I sent you how much did I have to pay you to say that, Larry? Okay. So, all right. It has been a super, my goodness, if life was any more interesting, I don't know what I would do. Over the weekend, we had more and more and more stuff happening in international affairs and relationships and whatnot. But I do want to start with Tesla. And I wanted to start with this note from Tesla Roddy today. Tesla Roddy says, Robotaxi is being touted as a failure by headlines even before the launch.
Isn't that marvelous?
Just headline after headline after headline. Oh, they're, it's a total mess. It's a total problem. And I'm like, what do you think these mainstream media outlets and whatnot gain? What do they gain? Do you think they gain
I think
viewership? What do
they
you,
get clicks. I guess they get clicks. Every negative. Um, yeah, look, there are some people who are looking for to be reinforced with, Elon man bad, and so they'll click on it. It's it really just demeans the whole process of the journalism that journal is conducting. But I mean, there is a lot of angst in the community around what is going to be in, how this thing is going to launch. And I've heard criticisms of the design of the cybercab. It doesn't have ordinary charging. It only, I mean, everybody and his brother is a better product manager than Elon Musk.
right?
Everybody and his brother is a better business strategist than Elon Musk. Everybody and his brother can make a better car than Elon Musk. It's very tiresome. It's really tiresome. People don't realize how ridiculous they actually are when they make these declamations. Anyway, it is what it is. And the robotaxi, we learned last week that the robotaxi is going to roll out very slowly at first, 10 to 20 vehicles. It's going to be by invitation for the first couple of days or weeks. Um, and then, we're told, oh, it's going to scale slowly. Oh, it's going to scale this way. It's going to scale the way it's going to scale. Tesla have their ideas and their thoughts, and I'm developing my ideas. I am doing a lot of research in order to develop those ideas. I'm not making these declarations, or as I call them, declamations. Um, we'll see. And I do trust the people at Tesla to be very thoughtful of how they do it. One thing's for sure, they've definitely got the machinery to roll this out on a very large scale very quickly, as they prove the service and as they feel more and more confident. They definitely have the means, both in terms of the cash, the capital, the in the the network of service centers. So they have the infrastructure. They have what they don't have yet is the induction charging that we know of. We don't know any induction charging that's been installed yet, but I suspect that that's going to come later in the year as they roll out the cybercabs, and I think it's going to be behind the wall.
Mhm.
So I think the induction charging is going to happen in the service centers. And when I say service centers, I don't necessarily mean Tesla service centers. I necessarily mean um, robotaxi service centers, although I think they're going to be combined in the first instance. That's what we saw in terms of showrooms and service centers in the outset of the Tesla journey.
Mhm, mhm.
And then they've started splitting off the services, and they've started splitting off the bodywork and the showrooms for each one from the other. And so you've got a massive network and infrastructure of these centers across the United States, 200 service centers, many more sales centers, many, I think 60 now, bodywork centers. So you've got in every major market in this country a really comprehensive Tesla management and service operation. So I'm very confident of their ability to roll out as against all these other service providers like Uber, like Waymo, who actually rent whatever um, infrastructure they need in the city, and they don't have experience in operating large-scale infrastructure at all. So we'll see.
Yeah, so it would seem to me that, for instance, on the service centers, the place where they have the showrooms and whatnot, these are not open to the public
Right.
after 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night. So you have now a huge parking facility. You have
It's not even that, Randy, because the front is open to the only thing that's open to the public is the showroom and the service counter.
right.
Behind the service counter and behind the buildings
Mhm. Yes,
are not open to the public.
right.
Now, every service center has got that arrangement where they've got the service intake,
Mhm, mhm.
walk up to the desk, they take over the car. You can't go beyond that point. So behind the service center is where they do the charging. They have charging networks. They have charging facilities right now. Fast chargers as well, by the way, but also AC chargers. But in addition to the DC and AC chargers, many of these service centers have an additional very large holding area for new vehicles where they bring the new vehicles in. And that's often at the service center or at another location where there's additional infrastructure. So it macht nicht
Yeah.
that the cars are not busy at night and they'll come in for the services at night. That really is an additional perk that they have, but they definitely have area to hold the vehicles and to service the vehicles and to clean the vehicles and to operate the vehicles behind the current service centers. There's huge amount of space. I've investigated several locations now all over the United States,
Mhm.
and I see the same pattern. So
Yeah, it makes sense that they would have the same layout. So that's the side of the infrastructure. That's the side of being able to take care of the vehicles better than anybody else in the business can possibly do.
yeah, and this is where Waymo has been tripped up very badly. I mean, Waymo have very limited facilities. I think they're working on them, but they had the cars wandering around the streets of San Francisco, parking in parking lots. I mean, not very attractive. And they don't have that many cars, and they're having all this kind of problem. Tesla could easily, in a location, store 300 to 400 vehicles currently.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, they need that space to store new vehicles as they come off the trucks, as they, get these waves of quarter end. But I think they've got themselves out of that habit, and so a lot of the space is available. But they're very familiar with the whole process of managing cars in bulk. Even Uber do not have their own facilities. Even Uber rent facilities. They don't rent facilities. They subcontract facilities. So they use Hertz and other subcontractors to do all the servicing work and cleaning work and whatever work they have to do. Tesla does all its own servicing, 100% of its own servicing. Nothing is contracted out. So they have the management infrastructure, they have the physical infrastructure, and they have the technical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure to manage globally. And when I say globally, They have over 600 service centers globally, over 200 service centers in the United States, over 800 facilities just in the United States, if you count all the Tesla facilities, combined. So they definitely have the infrastructure that right now neither Uber nor Waymo nor any of the other wannabes have. So in terms of rolling out, and by the way, the one thing I didn't mention is management structure. So every one of these areas, and there are 200 different, not 200, 200 service centers, but I think they're in like 30 or 40 different areas. Each one of those areas have got a management structure. So, ramping that up is, I think, child's play.
Right, right, right. So then the other side, so you've got the infrastructure side of it, then you've got the actual performance of the vehicle. So the performance of the vehicle, James Dalma this weekend did a real nice video with Farzad. And during the course of that video, he said, look, the car is ready. He has no doubt that it will be introduced in June. He has no doubt that it will be successful in terms of its capabilities in doing the job. That he has driven the FSD 12 point, is it 12.2.8? I think that's right, right?
0.9 right now.
Well, but he didn't have
13.2.8.
Yes, 13.2.8 was the one he was using. He didn't have.
And I'm using 13.2.9, which is a significant improvement, not a significant, an improvement over 2.8. And one interesting thing I will tell you is that my garage is very tight on the cars that I have in it. But this version is the first version where even parked in the garage, I'm able to press the button. It'll pull itself out of the garage, maneuver through the fairly narrow gap between cars and opening, and then drive out the driveway and just continue on its own.
Nice.
I haven't actually figured out whether it'll drive into the driveway.
Okay. Okay. All right. So he was very highly confident that this rollout will be just fine. And you apparently, even using a more advanced version, are finding it to be outstanding. Do you have any worries? Do you have any concerns? Do you have any angst over the rollout?
None at all.
None at all.
None at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it goes well, then there's going to be a ramp. People would like to, somebody was it James? Yeah, I think it was James also that said, everybody has all these expectations of the ramp. And he says a lot of those people are going to be very disappointed, even if it does well. But that what matters is he believes that that Elon's number of millions on the road by the end of 2026 will be, he believes it's an absolute certainty that those millions will be on the road by 2027.
I'm very much aligned with James. I think that, I've heard from all the Tesla followers. I know people call them fanboys. I hate the name, and I hate the term Uber bulls or bulls, but even the Tesla followers, there's a very wide range of expectation. Everything from, just a few cars to, millions, overnight. So I'm tending towards the more conservative side, James's area. I think they're going to start very slowly because there are human lives involved. And Tesla have always been very, very safety conscious. I think far more safety conscious than most auto companies, and far more safety conscious than their critics would credit them with. And so I'm with James. I think it's going to be, slowly but surely, slowly but surely, and slowly, and then all of a sudden. And you can think about how, the supercharging network rolled out. Very slowly at first. There were 1, then there was 5, then there were 10, and then there were 20, and then suddenly you turn around, there's 7,500 locations. It's like, boom, it happened. So I think that's going to be the way it goes.
So Bradford just posted just a few minutes ago. Bradford Ferguson posted. He says that he thinks that a lot of people now are seeing Robotaxi and Optimus as the all or nothing bet on Tesla. Now it's a little bit fair in that Elon said, if you don't believe in Robotaxi and Tesla, you shouldn't be invested. I mean, sorry, Robotaxi and Optimus, you shouldn't be invested in Tesla. But maybe it's a little bit unfair to think of it as being all there is. I don't know. What do you think about that, Larry?
Oh, I think you can believe what Elon says, but also believe that the auto business is going to continue being a good business. Whether that business consists of selling only vehicles or selling vehicles and robotaxi or selling only robotaxi is a matter of timing and scale. So right now they're selling vehicles and gosh, they're selling $70 billion worth of vehicles a year. Some auto companies will give their eye teeth to be able to earn the margins and deliver that, level of revenue. And I think they're going to grow this into a $100 million business. Now, will the robotaxi business start eating away at the auto business? I hope so.
Yeah.
It would be great for the world. It would be great for Tesla. It would be great for the stockholders. But that's down the road a ways. If we think about 27 as the ramping, 26 is the introduction of the larger scale robotaxi network, and then 27 as the scaling up of the robotaxi network, you're going to get 2030 before the robotaxi network is going to start eating into auto sales in general.
Yeah.
28, 29, auto sales in general. Tesla less so than the other auto sales because the Tesla auto, is going to be, part of the robotaxi network. So the robotaxi network is going to consist of cybercabs, but also other form factors, because not every journey is a two passenger journey.
Right.
So we'll see, but the auto business is an integral part for me of the Tesla business model for a while to come. That's number one. And number two, nothing is going to replace the semi business. The semi business is going to be the semi business, going to be the semi business. And it's going to be a massive business. So if you take the semi business and the auto business, I think it's going to be, a business for a while to come. And I will remind you that it's highly unlikely that robotaxi is going to take over all business in China, simply because the cost of labor in China is so low, the cost of drive labor is so low, that for many years to come, people are going to demand their cars. And this is true in many other countries as well. India, for example, every car is driven by a chauffeur, family cars as well. So, um, so I think that's wrong. And then the second issue, the second reason and what Brad says may be true of some people in their heads, but what I'm trying to point out is that that's not true of the company, because in addition to the $70 billion business they have a $20 billion business growing by doubling every year in energy. And if we're going to believe Elon in his analysis of what is going to be necessary for AI, that's going to double, that's going to triple, that's going to quadruple. So that energy business is a huge business. And, Tesla are in the mode of perfecting battery manufacturing, and they're going to outcompete, in my judgment, the Chinese in manufacturing those batteries in due course. So that may be in people's minds, and Brad may be correct in that regard, but it is definitely not the case if you look at what the future holds for that company.
So there could also be a case made, because Brian Wong's been making the case for a long time, that Dojo will be a bigger producer of big chips, of data center chips than even NVIDIA. So that could be by 20, anything that'll happen by 28. So that could be another massive business.
Well, I think Brian, like most futurists, collapse times in their minds. But I don't doubt his observation. So we may just disagree, and he may be right, and I may be wrong. I'm always happy to be wrong in this regard. I think it's going to take a little bit longer, but I would say not only chips. I would say that there are businesses that we don't even know exist at the moment that Tesla is going to ace. Because when you look at what it's developing by way of real world AI, what it's developing by way of manufacturing expertise and manufacturing perfection and manufacturing capability, and you think about embodied AI, electric power, um, and the infrastructure that is being developed, in terms of supporting this embodied world, then you would be you would it would be reasonable for you to believe that there are other major ideas that are going to come from this stew of expertise. And there's flight, there's water, there's underwater, there's underground. There's just so much to be had from this combination of unique skills.
So this will now seem trivial by comparison, Larry. I wanted to do this way because we have all of this in front of us and some of it
Yeah.
very soon. And so it's trivial, but I've been suggesting for the last few weeks that I'm a little nervous in the short-term stock situation about the car sales right now. And I'm not 100% sure that the Tesla being down $8 today in a flat market wasn't reflecting a little bit of nervousness about vehicle sales. I think long term, as I've mentioned on this channel many times, that when we have unsupervised driving FSD, car sales will no longer be an issue ever again. But in the meantime, are you feeling like maybe we are in a soft spot here on vehicle sales that might continue longer than the first half?
There's very little doubt in my mind that car sales in the United States, and in particular in Europe, have been very heavily impacted by Elon's political forays. There is a whole segment of the population who are now opposed to any product, any Tesla product, and any Musk product. Um, and and the animus is quite significant. I mean, it's deep and it's harsh, and so it has definitely impacted sales. I know a lot of people said, "Yeah, those guys don't want to buy," but there's a whole new market. New markets take a while to evolve. They take a while to happen. It's uh, it's not going to be overnight, particularly in Europe.
Mhm.
Europe is in transition. They haven't transitioned yet. They may. Some countries have already shown their transition, but until Germany, France, and Britain make that dramatic transition that Trump has brought about in this country, and then even then you've got the same situation where you've got the cognoscenti, the ruling class, the educated class, are in this fever. They don't lose this fever overnight. And you have, people who are more conservative, more traditional, who probably are less moneyed than the ruling class. And so you're going to see, the softness of sales. And I think we've got, a couple of years to go.
Okay. All right. Let's switch over to international situations. So the president this morning got on the phone with Putin as promised. He said he spent 2 hours in conversation with Putin. And while I think most of the headlines and even the articles that I read on the subject were kind of like, nothing really happened here. I'll give you my analysis, my theory, Larry. You know how I always love to throw my theories out at you and then let you either, agree wholeheartedly, which I'm
Which I always do.
which you always do. All right, so here's my theory. And by the way, some of this is not my theory at all. I've gotten it from many, many other people who think this way. So the beginning of it is the president of the United States has gone out with that idea of prosperity for everybody. So starting in the United States, we've got the golden age. He then goes over to all the rest of the countries in the world, say, look, if you'll get on my bandwagon, there can be prosperity everywhere. He specifically goes over to the Middle East and sells his prosperity mission to them. They agree with him wholeheartedly, roll out the purple carpet, and they're like, we're on board with this prosperity future. As he does this, one by one, he's been isolating other countries. And he got it down to where basically even China now seems to want to be in on the prosperity. So that isolates Russia, the Ukraine, Iran, and North Korea. They become the outliers, the only outliers.
How does Ukraine become an outlier?
Ukraine,
Ukraine's entered into this incredible deal with the
right,
United
right.
States.
But they're not, and they've said they're willing to approach peace. So they would be closer to being in on the deal. But Russia was still holding out, North Korea, and of course Iran. But Iran has even started acting like they want to play. We'll see whether that plays out. But I want to
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
I want to concentrate on Russia, Ukraine. So at this point, the one thing I saw in the articles that I read was that Putin said he wants some of that U.S. business. So has Trump convinced Putin that it's time to get on the golden age train?
Putin wants to be on the golden age train, but he wants Ukraine as well.
I see he wants to do both. He wants his cake and eat it.
Yes, he does. And he's never varied. He's never wavered. That is his goal. He wants to be on the golden age train and he wants Ukraine.
Okay, so what happens?
More war.
So nothing. There's not the conversation today will end up at the continued stalemate, because I'm also reading that the Ukraine is building, as they promised they would, that they're building massive numbers of drones and a lot of munitions, that they're really, really getting good at building munitions. And
They don't have any choice. They have to do it.
I'm just saying.
If they want to survive. Look, everybody underestimated Ukraine and they continue to underestimate Ukraine. Everybody says Ukraine's dead, Russia's going to win the war, blah, 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 particularly David Sachs. But Ukraine has again and again and again surprised us with its resourcefulness, with its depth of capability, and its ability to wring money out of its allies. So I think Ukraine is, look, the Russian juggernaut has not stopped. It continues, even yard by yard, yard by yard. They are prepared to sacrifice many, many lives for every yard that they take. And, they are killing off a lot of Ukrainians. And even though the death on the battlefield is 5-1 in favor of Ukraine, or 5-2 in favor of Ukraine, some number in that ratio, Russia can afford to send the soldiers from North Korea and the soldiers from the wastes of the icy wastes, of its allies and even its outer reaches of empire.
Yeah.
Until something gives. In the First World War, that's what the Tsar did. He just threw men into this meat grinder. Well, it didn't end well for the Tsar. I'm not sure it'll going to end well for Putin. If this war drags on another year and a half, Putin's done for.
Mm.
If the war drags on for another year and a half, it's quite possible Ukraine can lose another, many thousand of square feet or square miles. But Ukraine's got the depth, has got, strategic depth. They're not going to get to Kiev. They're not going to get to any of the major cities, west of the Dnieper. So I think he's on a losing game. That's what I believe, but I could be wrong. And Europe is going to have to dig very, very deep. And it looks like they're willing to do it. At least we've got a chancellor in Germany who's prepared to do it. For the moment, we've got a president in France who wants to do it. So we'll see.
So the other big news of the weekend, Larry, and it's troubling to me, and it's been troubling to a few other people that I've talked to, is the complete discrediting, to the extent that there was any credit still left, of the previous government in terms of their honesty. It appears now that not only were there plenty of people that knew about the problems that Biden was having with his mental health, but it appears now from every medical source that I can find, and my brother has prostate cancer. He's had it for 8 years. I know a lot about prostate cancer as a result of his journey. There is no way in the world that you can have the best doctor in the world potentially taking care of you and not know that you have prostate cancer, and have it be stage, whatever it is, be in your bones at this point. My brother's is in his bones at this point, and he's known about that for over a year, on top of the fact that he had it not in his bones for 7 years before that. It's a very slow growing cancer. And even when it gets to your bones, it's slow growing. What do you think? How does the public, forget the Democrats? Well, maybe the Democrats, but how does the general public, does this cast a really big pall over trust of government in general? What do you think the results of this is, short and long term?
All the frauds that have been practiced on us in the course of the Biden administration and the candidacy of his vice president, Ms. Kamala Harris. Nothing surprises me because the fraud was so blatant. When I saw the clip of Biden being feted by his wife after the debate, I don't know if you remember seeing it, you answered every question like she was talking to a child.
Right.
That was the most shocking moment of the Biden administration for me, because it was quite clear she was in charge. It was quite clear she was managing this poor, broken man. And it was quite clear that everybody in that room understood it. As a student of history, I know what went down during the Wilson presidency, and this was an absolute repetition of that. And what we see is how much power accrued to those people around the president and how much they clung to that power for, in the face of everything. I think that this news about Biden's cancer is coming out this week because the tape from her is being released or being
Right.
teased out or whatever. I think it's the only way they can get this tape to kind of go away. Poor Biden's sick, he's dying, blah, blah, blah. So, this whole thing is just such a scandal. It is such a travesty. It'll be looked back in history and marked as one of the lowest points of the presidency.
So, Larry, what do we do? I mean, people are,
And when I say the lowest point
of
in the history
of the
of
president.
US presidency.
So how do we respond? There's a part of those who manage the political life of our country that say, don't continue to beat up on the opposition when they're at the lowest point because they're already doing it to themselves. Just let them continue to beat up themselves. There's a part, though, that say there's been fraud here. The doctor was fraudulent, had to be, 100% had to be fraudulent. The other people around him that were propping him up, that were signing documents. Do we need to have a cleansing? Do we need to have some kind of,
No.
No.
And the reason I say no is because I saw the damage that was done by the January 6th mob, the January 6th prosecutors who used some sort of financial regulatory law to convict January 6th protesters. Look, a law has been broken, just as January 6th laws were broken. We will break the republic if we go after each and every one of them to the full extent of the law, or to whatever extent we can bend the law, press the law, just as they nearly did with Trump with this Russiagate thing. Just because your opponent used a dirty trick or used many dirty tricks or acted in a way that is not legal does not mean that you should respond in that light. I think it's best to actually air this publicly, to do a full investigation, air it publicly. I think that that's sufficient. I thought that was sufficient at Watergate, by the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In this case, there's nobody to resign. One
Right.
thing's for sure, Kamala Harris must never be allowed to run again. I mean, she was part of the fraud.
Sure.
And it should be called out, and there should be an investigation, should be aired out. Many of the advisors, so all the advisors to the president and that clique should not be allowed to hold office again. And how that's done is by some sort of Truth and Reconciliation Committee, some sort of commission. Maybe it's a joint commission of Congress. This is the time to do a joint commission and sit down and say, guys, we got to talk about Russiagate, and we've got to talk about, the state of the presidency and say, this is the point at which we have to reform government and we have to get rid of these, criminal, these attempts to destroy our opponents criminally. I think, one of the problems is that that justice has become the Department of Justice has become too independent of the president.
Mm.
I think if I look at the great failings of Russiagate and the Mueller investigation and the great failings of the January 6th investigations, I think it is because the Justice Department regards itself as a separate branch of government, and there's nothing in the Constitution that permits that. I think this notion that the president is not the executive the United States, the sole executive of the United States, and that some of these powers can somehow be carved away and be put under some kind of independent I think and including, by the way, the Federal Reserve Bank, I think all of that has to be shorn away, and we have to return to the structure of the
original
Constitution not the original of the Constitution. If we want to change the Constitution, fine, we should amend it. But the Constitution is so clear. This whole idea of the Department of Justice being somewhat independent is a construction, a lawyerly construction, but is not in the Constitution, and it's not in the Constitution for a very good reason.
All right, well said, well said. Well, we'll see what happens over the next weeks and months, but I was curious to hear your take. I think it's clearly we got a serious problem when that kind of thing can take place, and something needs to happen, but we'll see what does over time. Larry, the market was really flat today. I got it half right yesterday night when I said I thought the market would be flat today. I got it half wrong because I thought Tesla would also be quite flat today.
It wasn't.
It wasn't flat. It went down. In the after hours right now, Tesla is still another 39 cents. So not really much difference, but it is down in the after hours right now. I have day by day, Larry, my time is running out on my all-time high by the end of May, but I'm still in.
That can happen.
They gave me 2 extra weeks though, right? I got till June 15th now.
Because?
Well, because I asked for it. I said, would you guys give me 2 extra weeks? And everybody seemed to think that 488 by June 15th would be just fine with them.
Why didn't you ask for 12 extra weeks?
Because I really think that's when it's going to happen. Okay, so let's take a look though at after the Dow Jones was up by 0.32, NASDAQ up by 0.02, and the S&P up by 0.09, which I call that pretty darn flat.
I do want to point out that Tesla was down. It actually recovered quite a bit from the thing on extremely light trading.
Okay. All right.
So they traded 80 million shares compared to the normal 110, 120. What is the normal? I think the average volume is 100 and somewhere. Average volume 105 million. Yeah. The 25% down in volume. So
yeah. Okay. So that means less than it would otherwise.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So then we go to my favorite subject, as you know, the bonds. So here's here's
all right. Were you wrong about the bonds?
Well, not 100%, Larry, because
100%.
Well, wait a minute. So we ended
There's a difference between a 4-handle and a 5-handle.
Okay, wait a minute. Where did it go? Where did the bonds go here? I lost them.
5-handle.
All right. So we are at 4 point. Is this true? Oh, wow.
We hit a 5-handle this year today.
Oh, that was on the 30-year.
30. You're right.
So we're at 4.49, and it's coming down in the after hours. So down 2.6 in the, well, I guess pre-market to call it correctly. But 4.49 is where it's been basically for about 4 trading sessions, I think.
Yeah, but once the 30-year gets to that 5 level, it's going to impact us. We haven't felt it yet. We're going to feel it.
Okay, so your belief is that the bonds will not go down from here? I'm sorry, that the bonds will not rally from here anytime soon?
No, the rate of return on the bonds are not going to go down. I think the rate of return is going to go up. I think there's going to be pain in the sale of the bonds, and I think that pain is going to reflect back in and unfortunately the market as well.
So I thought my feeling was that the decision by Moody's to do their downgrade on Friday was to jab the Republicans to reduce the budget even more in committee. They did reduce it, and they brought it forward a little bit and passed it out last night to the full House. But maybe the bonds being down 2.6 in the pre-market is a little bit of a celebration of that. It seems to me that's what Moody's is saying. That's what I think the general public is saying. We got to get this spending under control.
Right. Right. This budget does not get spending under control or anything near like it.
We agree. I would like to see it a lot lower, a lot less. I mean, the spending be even less by a bunch. Would you think that the Senate will force any of that?
Yeah, the Senate's worse than the House. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to be about at this level.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
and I think Trump is making a mistake. I think Trump could have forced a really, really strong budget, budget with a very significant reduction in expense. But I have a whole thesis coming out on healthcare. I think we could cut healthcare in this country by a very significant amount. You and I have discussed it. It's really what is driving the deficit. So it's not all budget.
right.
Budget would certainly help. Control of the budget, discipline in the budget would certainly help.
Right, right. So then on top of the budget, I think, let me explain in case I don't understand. So we have the budget, but that doesn't mean that the administration within the confines of the budget can't find savings in healthcare from fraud, waste, and abuse, et cetera, are the things that you're going to point out. They can still find these savings and end up with less expenditures than the budget.
Well, no, the problem that you have is that the budget allocates this money.
Right.
The money gets spent regardless. The question is how much of it is in fraud, waste, and abuse, and how much it goes towards the program. So whether it goes to fraud, waste, and abuse or it goes towards the program, it's still spent in that volume.
So because we have the rescission thing, and we have
we have this problem, constitutional problem, where the Supreme Court has held that the president doesn't have the right not to spend the money that it spends. That's what you call rescission. So the problem is that right now the Supreme Court has not been helpful. They have held that when the Congress says you shall spend $100 billion on this thing, then you have to spend $100 billion on this thing. Now, what DOJ can do and what the president can do is make sure that they spend the $100 billion on that thing, and that thing is meaningful, and that thing doesn't, is not fraudulent, and it's not wasteful, and it's not abusive, but it's supposed to be spent, and it's his responsibility to spend it. So, again, it's the problem of what the court has decided. And I think the court has decided decidedly wrong.
Right.
But that's been an argument that's been held ever since the Constitution was drawn up.
Right. Okay. All right. So we've got oil flat, Larry, sitting at a good number, 62, 67. So I'm pretty happy with that level.
A great number for us.
Great number. Now, natural gas, I had promised everybody I was going to look into this before I saw you tonight, but my morning has been jammed with one show after another. Natural gas is down to 311. So I don't know what's going on there. It's dropping like a rock. Maybe, we would normally say, oh, it's going to be a pleasant spring, but or summer. But I don't know why natural gas is just dropping like a.
Yeah, natural gas is a market I've never understood. I don't understand now, so I don't know how to answer you.
All right, here's the one that you claim to understand, and you've called it right multiple times. That's gold. So we've got gold sitting at 322.9, call it 33,330. Down a little bit in the pre-market. What do you think? You think it's going? Last time we talked on Friday, you said you think it's going down.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue going down.
And where will that money go? What are people going to put it into instead? Is there an alternative that they're taking it out in order to do something else? Or
I think there's a global recognition that Trump is changing terms of trade, that he's changing the world, and the world is retreating from this rush into gold and rush out of dollars. I think there's a revival in the vibe of the United States.
then what do you think about my other theory? I thought it would happen starting today. He kind of made a hint of it over the weekend that Trump will eventually, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, start beating on the bond issue from the bully pulpit. The Treasury has been doing a little quantitative easing. Um, he can, there's other things he can do. I forget my list now. But anyway, do you think that Trump will turn his attention to the bond market?
He better. Listen, every time you talk to me about bonds, I keep banging my drum of dismay at what Janet Yellen did.
Yeah, right.
But we don't have that degree of freedom right now. But listen, Scott Bessent is a very, very bright guy. And he's probably one of the best bond salesmen in all of Wall Street right now. And I think he's going to sell a lot of our bonds. Hopefully he's able to.
Yeah, so that I know that was one of my other thoughts that I had was that the president and through Scott Bessent could lean on all of our new friends in the Middle East, in China, et cetera, to stop all this selling and start being a better partner.
Well, how is Saudi Arabia going to get the dollars to pay us for all these things that they, going to pay us for? That's the nature of the trade. So that could be explanation for the drop in the price of gold and, the improvement in the dollar. We're going to have to sell bonds. And there's no better salesman than, Donald Trump.
Yep. Well, we'll see if he starts to sell here soon. That's my expectation. Larry,
selling all the time. I mean, all of this bestriding the narrow world like this giant colossus is building, this sense of destiny for the United States, the sense the United States is back, the sense that, well, we better get some dollars.
Yeah. The equity markets, Larry, are flat. There is no reporting tomorrow, not a single economic report coming tomorrow, almost none on, I think, maybe none on Wednesday. We don't see a serious economic report until Thursday, and even there, it's pretty thin. So the week could be pretty flat overall. That's kind of barring, I don't know, Trump sometimes makes news.
Well, we'll soon have a little change in the whole, speed of everything as we enter into the summer. Sell in May and go away. Didn't they say that?
That's what they say. AJ seems to have done some kind of an analysis on that and says it's not really true.
No, it's not. It's not.
All right, Larry, thanks again. As always, I have to end. You could prepare some of these in advance, but maybe it's better to get them right off the top of your head. So any wisdom for today?
The wisdom for today is, question everything. I mean, when I look back at the Biden administration, you have to ask what they told us was not, which one of the things they told us was not a lie.
Yeah. It is. So question everything. I'm writing that down, Larry.
All right.
All right. Thanks as always for coming on. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.